What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Doctor Who review. Today I'm going to be reviewing the 12th Doctor Peter Capaldi story, Twice Upon a Time. Now this is of course the 2017 Christmas special. It's actually the last Christmas special we've had because since this point we've only had New Year's specials, so it is the last Christmas special. Maybe we'll hopefully get another one in the future, but at this current point in time it is the most recent. And it is of course the final episode for Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor. It's his regeneration story, and with that the most recent regeneration story, so a big one for sure. It also of course marked the end of Stephen Moffat's time as showrunner, and for the next episode introduced Chris Chibnall, who is the current showrunner, and of course Jodie Whittaker as the new Doctor. So a big episode here, and it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's taken me a long time to get to this episode after I picked it out of the TARDIS of episodes ages back now, but it has kind of I've come around to do it now, and it's pretty much a week till Christmas now, just under, so it's good timing. So anyway, let's get started with this episode. So starting with the cast, we've got Peter Capaldi as the 12th Doctor, and yeah, he's pretty good in this one. He definitely has lots of great moments, some funny moments, some slightly more serious moments, although this episode is a little bit more on the kind of jokey side, I'd say, because it is a Christmas special, a little bit, less serious than some others. But yeah, altogether Peter Capaldi is great here. He gives a great performance for his final proper full-on episode, and yeah, there's nothing really bad to say about him. We've also got David Bradley as the first Doctor in this one, who is fine in my opinion. I think his acting is really good, and I think generally he portrays the first Doctor very well, but I think it's more of an issue with the writing of how the writers have kind of decided to depict the first Doctor, mainly with all the sexist stuff. I mean, yes, the first Doctor on our TV was around in a time where, things like that were, I guess, more normal and more acceptable to say, and they're kind of trying to get at that in this episode, but I think they go a bit too far. I think if they just did it maybe once or twice, just like little bits here and there, it wouldn't be so bad, but I think they really go at it too much, with the Doctor just being way too sexist in this one, and yeah, honestly, it's quite off-putting. We've also got Pearl Mackie as Bill Potts, who is great. It's awesome seeing Bill back. Yes, I mean, she did basically die in the previous episode, and it was a good send-off for it, and now she's back again, but it's not technically her, so I can kind of accept it, and I think she's pretty good here. I will also mention Mark Gatiss as the captain, who was also very good in this episode. Didn't do a whole lot. I mean, he was just kind of there and said a few lines and had a few funny little moments, but for what he had, he was very good. Alright, so on to the good and the bad, starting with the good. The 1st and 12th Doctors both refusing to regenerate. So of course, the end of the Doctor falls. I mean, we got the whole cliffhanger of the 1st Doctor being here, but we also had the thing of the 12th Doctor did not want to regenerate because he felt like it was all going on for way too long, and when will this end? He's basically just, he regenerates, he makes new friends, and then he loses friends, and he's just getting kind of tired of it. And then the 1st Doctor, this is the first time he is ever going to regenerate, although with, the, what's it called? I've forgotten what it's called. The series 12 episode, I can't even remember. The Children one, Timeless Children, that's one. Technically not the first regeneration of the Doctor, but it's the first one they remembers, so yeah, okay. The 1st Doctor doesn't want to regenerate either because it's a big step for him, so it's a nice little dynamic that the two have got going on there. Music from the RTD era, namely Doomsday. The Doomsday track, I don't think I've really noticed it before, but watching this episode, I heard this music in the background. I'm like, that sounds really familiar from like the David Tennant era, and sure enough, it was the Doomsday track. Slightly different, slightly different kind of mix of it, and I think, because I looked it up on my phone while I was watching it, I think it's called I'm Afraid for kind of on this soundtrack, but yeah, it was basically the Doomsday theme, and we heard it a couple times, and I think there were a couple of other kind of RTD era soundtracks on here, which was really interesting. Of course, this was actually the final episode for Murray Gold as the kind of, music producer, I guess you want to call him. It was his last episode, because after this, whatever his name was, I've totally forgotten right now, would take over for series 11 and 12, and Chris Chibnall's era, a whole new era. So this was Murray Gold's last one, so I guess maybe they put some older music in there to, for him to have a nice little send-off, and I just love that because just the feeling of the kind of Tennant era music is just awesome for me. It's my favorite era of the show, probably with music as well, so it's just all nostalgic and I loved hearing that here. The testimony is not evil. Turns out that the villain of the story isn't actually a villain, and you know what, I do quite like it when that happens. It doesn't happen too often in Doctor Who, but when it does, it's quite special, and here, I think it's done pretty well. The Doctor's really, he's like, I'm gonna get to the bottom of this, I'm gonna stop you guys, and then he realizes, oh, they're actually not here to kill people, they're here to, people that are gonna die, they're kind of here to help them and sort of preserve them in a way, and you know what, it's actually kind of a good thing, it's definitely not a bad thing. So yeah, a really interesting little plot kind of, plot idea there. I thought that worked quite well. The captain is presumably the Brigadier's father, so at the end he says, oh, can you look after my family, just pay a visit to them now and again, and he says their name is Lethbridge Stewart. So yeah, and he said he's got 2 sons, so presumably the Brigadier is one of those sons. I mean, the timing's probably around about right, so yeah, this is presumably, I'm guessing, the captain is the Brigadier's father, so that's pretty cool, and I like how that ties in. Some people weren't a big fan of it, but personally I quite like it, and I think it works really well. Just really good stuff, the First Doctor, and then obviously very, very soon into the Second Doctor's era, well actually towards the end of the Second Doctor's era to be honest, but he would then finally meet the Brigadier, and yeah, I think it ties in really well. The Christmas armistice, where both sides made a truce for the night. Honestly, probably one of my favourite parts of the episode. I just love it, and to be honest, this whole episode, I love the last 10-15 minutes. The rest of the episode, I personally think, is a bit of a disappointment for a final episode, but the last 10-15 minutes, kind of when it's revealed that the testimony isn't evil, when they go back to the battlefield, and when they have the Christmas armistice, I just love that whole thing. I think the atmosphere is great. It's shot really well. It looks amazing. I mean, this episode looks phenomenal, I think. And yeah, just seeing, both sides singing Christmas carols, playing a game of soccer, shaking each other's hands, helping each other, helping the wounded from each side. I just think it's a really awesome moment, and it's a moment that it literally happened in history, and I love how they work that into this episode. The Doctor's testimony speech is great, and the Doctor's talking about his testimony and how many people, he would see as a glass testimony person, because all the people that have died from him and in his, in his past, and it's a really sad speech, and it's delivered beautifully by Peter Capaldi. And then finally, of course, we've got the Doctor's regeneration speech. Personally, I don't think Capaldi's regeneration speech is as good as some others, but it's still pretty good. I think some of the things he says is a bit like, okay, that's a bit random, and doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, he had the whole thing about children hearing his name, which I found a little bit weird, like what exactly are you talking about here? But generally, I like it. I like the, never ever eat pears, and I love the laugh hard, be kind, Doctor, I let you go. I love that. I think that's a really awesome way for him, and really emotional way for the 12th Doctor to leave us. So on to the bad. Firstly, a thing that I've already mentioned, the First Doctor's sexist remarks are a bit too much. Yeah, like I said before, if they maybe had 1 or 2 here and there in the episode, I wouldn't have been as bothered, but yeah, generally, I think it's way too much. There's 5 or 6 or 7 of them in this episode, and it just goes on for way too much. There's a few about, because the First Doctor's like, oh, you're to the 12th Doctor, oh, your TARDIS is a bit dusty. Obviously, you've not got a woman around to, clean up. He says that once or twice, because he says it directly to Bill as well. Then you've got the whole thing of, I'll give you a smacked bottom to Bill. And you've generally just got a lot of sexist stuff going on here. And when I first watched this episode, it didn't bother me as much, I don't think. Well, I mean, it still bothered me, but I was like, oh yeah, maybe it's just, that's what it was like then. Now that I've watched a lot more of the First Doctor, you don't really see a lot of that. You don't see a lot of sexist stuff, really, from the Doctor, especially in the First Doctor's era. So it bothers me even more now, because I'm like, yes, they're trying to go for what it was at the time, but then looking back at the episodes from the time, there's actually not really much, if any, of that. So what were they really going for here? It does really bother me. And then the only other thing really that I've got to say that's bad, and it's not really that bad, but I found that Rusty's return seemed a little bit random for me. I mean, you had Rusty the Dalek at the end of Into the Dalek from Series 8, and he became a good Dalek, and now he's still a good Dalek, but now he hates the Doctor. I don't remember him hating the Doctor in Into the Dalek. Forgive me if I'm wrong there, but I don't remember that. And yeah, it just seemed like a bit of a, oh, let's get Rusty the Dalek back for Capaldi's final episode. He just basically used him as a projection to show, what the testimony was. Surely there was another way around that. It was cool seeing him, but at the same time, I don't think it was really necessary. Alright, so a rating for Twice Upon a Time, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. For me, it's not my favourite Christmas special. It's probably one of my favourite Capaldi Christmas specials, but to be honest, I'm not really a big fan of any of the Capaldi specials. To be honest, my favourite's probably Return of Dr. Mysterio, which I think is quite a controversial pick, because most people say that that's like the worst Christmas special of all time. For me, it's probably one of the least Christmassy, but honestly, I think it's one of the better ones. But this is probably my second favourite of his specials. I generally just think that the First Doctor's whole thing, the sexist thing, really puts me off. And generally just the episode is a bit slow going, not the most exciting. And yeah, it's okay, but nothing special for sure. Anyway, let's go and see what episode we'll be doing next time. Alright, so let's get the TARDIS here, give it a little shake. If we get another Capaldi episode, I will redraw it. Otherwise, whatever else we get, we're gonna go for. I'm just gonna pick one right off the top here, if I can even grab it, because I'm dropping it all the time. And our next episode is Asylum of the Daleks. Okay, Asylum of the Daleks. So we've got another Matt Smith episode, another Dalek episode. Personally, one of my least favourite Dalek episodes, but Asylum of the Daleks will be the next new series review that I do. Look at for that in the next few weeks. I'm going to try and get on top of videos a lot more, because I've been really slack recently, but I have had quite a lot going on over Christmas and stuff, so I will try and get on it in the next few weeks. So yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.